In just 38 seconds, $127 billion vanished from European monitoring systems. Alice Weidel didn't wait for parliamentary procedures. She placed document X7439 directly on the podium and began speaking. Cameras zoomed closer. The Bundestag fell silent. What did Alice Weidel reveal that made Germany's most stable political architecture begin to fracture before our eyes? I've been tracking European power dynamics for over a decade, but I've never witnessed anything like what happened at exactly 1423 today in Berlin. The leader of Alternative for Germany didn't just challenge the establishment. She detonated it from within, using their own classified financial data as the explosive device. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted the moment Weidel entered. She moved with calculated precision, carrying a black leather briefcase that would soon become the most dangerous object in German politics. Unlike her usual theatrical presentations, today she spoke with surgical calm. No shouting, no populist slogans, just devastating facts delivered with the precision of a financial prosecutor. The trigger document came from an unlikely source. 3 days ago, a whistleblower inside the Federal Ministry of Finance leaked internal correspondence labeled Energy Transition Emergency Protocol. The files revealed something that the Scholz government had desperately tried to bury. Between September 2024 and January 2025, $127 billion allocated for renewable energy infrastructure had been rerouted through a complex network of shell companies registered in Luxembourg and the Netherlands. Weidel didn't ease into the revelation. She began with wire transfer reference EU Net 4429X, dated December 18, 2024. The transaction showed funds originally destined for German solar farms being diverted to Sustainable Future Holdings, a consulting firm with mysterious ownership structures. The company's board of advisors included names that made several coalition members visibly uncomfortable. The personal attack came next, and it was surgical. Weidel alleged direct financial connections between the energy fund diversions and Green Party leadership. She specifically named 3 offshore accounts linked to family members of prominent environmentalist politicians. The numbers were precise: $4.7 million to account BNL 99483, $8.2 million to Liechtenstein 7742, and $12.1 million to Cyprus ENT 5531. The chamber erupted. Green Party members demanded she provide evidence or face legal action. Weidel's response was chilling. She produced certified bank statements, authenticated by Swiss financial authorities, showing the money trail. Every transaction was documented, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with official EU energy allocation records. But the revelation that stopped traffic across Berlin was her final accusation. Weidel claimed that Chancellor Olaf Scholz himself had signed Emergency Directive 4891 on November 23, 2024, authorizing the temporary reallocation of renewable energy subsidies for strategic European partnerships. The directive effectively legalized what amounted to the largest financial fraud in German post-war history. The reaction was visceral and immediate. Social Democratic Party representatives began shouting procedural objections. The Free Democrats sat frozen, realizing their coalition partnership was crumbling in real time. Christian Democratic Union members, traditionally opposed to AfD positions, remained ominously silent. They saw opportunity in the chaos. Within minutes of Weidel's presentation, German financial markets began responding. The DAX index dropped 3.2% as investors processed the implications. Energy sector stocks collapsed, with major renewable companies losing billions in market value. The euro weakened against the dollar as currency traders anticipated political instability. International observers immediately understood the stakes. If Weidel's allegations proved accurate, the Scholz government would face the largest political crisis since reunification. More importantly, the scandal would vindicate AfD's long-standing claims about establishment corruption, potentially transforming them from a fringe party into a legitimate governing alternative. The evidence trail Weidel presented was comprehensive and devastating. She revealed encrypted communications between ministry officials discussing contingency fund diversions. She produced audio recordings of phone calls where government advisors explicitly discussed hiding the financial rerouting from parliamentary oversight. Every piece of evidence was authenticated by independent forensic accountants. The geopolitical implications became clear within hours. European Union leadership in Brussels immediately distanced themselves from the German energy program, claiming they had no knowledge of the fund diversions. French President Macron canceled a scheduled meeting with Scholz, citing administrative complications. The message was unmistakable. Germany's European partners were preparing to sacrifice Berlin to protect the broader EU project. American intelligence sources confirmed they had been monitoring suspicious financial flows related to European green energy programs for months. The revelation that German leadership was potentially involved in systematic fraud provided Washington with unprecedented leverage over Berlin. NATO budget negotiations suddenly became far more complex. The timing of Weidel's attack was strategically brilliant. With state elections approaching in 3 key German regions, the scandal would dominate news cycles for weeks. Traditional parties would be forced to defend an increasingly indefensible position, while AfD positioned itself as the only force capable of cleaning up the corruption. By evening, the first government resignations began. 2 deputy ministers from the Environment Ministry announced their departures, citing irreconcilable differences with current policy directions. Coalition partners from the Free Democratic Party privately expressed doubts about continuing their alliance with Social Democrats. The constitutional crisis deepened as legal experts began analyzing the implications. If Weidel's evidence withstands judicial scrutiny, Article 67 of the German Constitution could be invoked, triggering a constructive vote of no confidence. The mechanism hasn't been successfully used since 1982, but current circumstances present unprecedented justification. Opposition leaders moved swiftly to capitalize on the chaos. Friedrich Merz of the Christian Democratic Union called for immediate parliamentary hearings, positioning his party as the stable alternative to both the collapsing coalition and the controversial AfD. The calculations were cynical but politically shrewd. Let Weidel destroy Scholz, then marginalize AfD through institutional procedures. Behind closed doors, European Central Bank officials held emergency consultations. The revelation of systematic fraud in Germany's green energy sector threatened the credibility of EU climate financing mechanisms. Mario Centeno, the Eurogroup president, reportedly described the situation as potentially more damaging than the 2008 financial crisis, due to its political ramifications. Intelligence sources revealed that Weidel's documentation had been corroborated by parallel investigations in 3 other EU member states. Similar fund diversion patterns were discovered in French renewable projects and Italian wind farm developments, suggesting a continent-wide network of financial manipulation disguised as environmental policy. The social implications began manifesting within hours. Protest movements organized through encrypted messaging apps demanding the complete dissolution of the current government. Environmental activists faced a devastating paradox. Their beloved green policies had been corrupted by the very politicians they had trusted to implement them. International media coverage focused on the broader implications for Western democracy. The Wall Street Journal characterized the scandal as evidence that European green transition policies have become vehicles for systematic corruption. The Financial Times warned that the crisis could trigger a domino effect across EU member states. By midnight, 3 more coalition members had privately indicated their intention to break ranks. The mathematics of parliamentary support became impossible to ignore. Scholz's government was operating on borrowed time, with each passing hour bringing new revelations and fresh resignations. The intelligence community confirmed that foreign actors had been monitoring the financial irregularities for months. Russian disinformation networks immediately amplified Weidel's claims, while Chinese state media portrayed the scandal as evidence of Western institutional decay. The geopolitical ramifications extended far beyond German borders. The ultimate question now facing Germany is whether democratic institutions can survive this level of systematic corruption being exposed. If Weidel's documentation proves completely accurate, the current government falls and early elections become inevitable. If her evidence contains any fabrications, AFD faces potential criminal charges for election interference, but the damage to public trust remains irreversible. The financial markets have already made their judgment. Overnight trading showed massive capital flight from German assets as investors positioned for prolonged political instability. The country that once anchored European economic stability has become its greatest risk factor, with contagion effects spreading across Eurozone markets. Energy sector companies faced an existential crisis as their government contracts came under judicial review. Major renewable projects worth tens of billions of euros were suspended pending fraud investigations. The green energy transition, Europe's signature policy achievement, had become a political liability overnight. Alice Weidel transformed from political outsider to kingmaker in 38 devastating seconds, wielding financial evidence like a political weapon of mass destruction. Whether she used that power to save German democracy from corruption or destroy it through populist manipulation remains to be seen. What's certain is that the balance of power in Europe's largest economy shifted permanently today, and the consequences will reshape the continent's political landscape for decades to come. Fraud investigations. The green energy transition, Europe's signature policy achievement, had become a political liability overnight. Alice Weidel transformed from political outsider to kingmaker in 38 devastating seconds, wielding financial evidence like a political weapon of mass destruction. Whether she used that power to save German democracy from corruption or destroy it through populist manipulation remains to be seen. What's certain is that the balance of power in Europe's largest economy shifted permanently today, and the consequences will reshape the continent's political landscape for decades to come.